Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Kustas, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hello, and welcome back to the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Kustas, and today I have to be honest with you. This is one of those episodes that I have genuinely been looking forward to because this conversation, it is going to be very personal for me too. We're going to be talking about marriage, divorce, and what it really takes to rebuild and rise after one of life's most defining transitions. Whether you are in the thick of it, or maybe you're perhaps on the other side of it, or you love someone who is possibly in it, this episode is for you because women need to hear this. They need to feel seen and they need to know that there is hope. My guest today has lived this from every possible angle. She spent years as a divorce attorney inside what I would say is probably the most raw and real moments of people's lives. And then she walked away from the courtroom to do something even more meaningful. She became a modern relationship expert and divorce strategist. And she didn't just study this, she has personally navigated marriage, divorce, and remarriage herself. She helps women and couples reconnect to what they truly want, identify and move through fear and limiting beliefs, and makes decisions that create a life that is authentically theirs. I am so honored to welcome Kara Francis to the Rise to Shine podcast. Kara, welcome.
Thank you, Noelle. What a great introduction. That was
So
so
fun, so much
lovely.
to say about you.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
We are really excited for you to be here as well. Again, I know told you before we hit play today that I feel like it is such an important conversation for women to really feel seen and not alone in these types of situations. So, before we really dive in, I would love to start somewhere a little bit more foundational because I think a lot of people hear relationship expert or divorce strategist, and they're not quite sure what that even means. So I would love for you to tell us, what do you actually do and how did walking away from the courtroom lead you here?
Yes, such a good question. I think the best way to describe what I do is I guide women home to themselves so that they can navigate marriage, divorce, and other major life transitions with
Yeah.
clarity and self-trust. And so that really means closing the gap between the version of life that a woman has built, whether it's because it's what she thought she wanted or was programmed to want, that version, and the life that's actually calling out to her, one that feels true and grounded and aligned. And not just good on paper, not what everyone else wants her or needs her to be, but what truly reflects who she is on the inside. And it's about really closing that gap and helping her align her inner world with her outer world.
I love that. I wish you were around several years ago. I wish I would have found you because I needed that so much. And you're so right. There is a gap that um, oftentimes we don't know how to fill that. And it feels so exactly what you said. And I know we're going to get into this, that we are not aligned. And we know that. We know that with the depths of our soul within that, we know it. But to all actually step out is such a scary place to be sometimes. So I would love to just kind of get into this because I know I mentioned this in the intro. How much has your own experience shaped the way that you decided to pivot? Because you did make a big pivot. And then also the way you now guide women through all of this.
So I feel like I'm usually helping and serving a prior version of myself. I
Right.
am very much a classic example of creating a life that looks good on paper, but doesn't actually match what I feel on the inside. And actually, not even really having the clarity on the inside, but just feeling that something felt off. I was very much a check the list kind of girly, go to college, get a job, meet the person who you're going to marry, buy the house, get
Right.
married. And it wasn't until having children was sort of next on the checklist that I finally had this moment of awakening of, hold on a second. I've done
Right.
all of these things. I've spent nearly three plus decades of my life following this plan that I never even stopped and checked in with myself along the way of, is this
Mm,
what I really want? Who am I actually?
right.
Why do I want these things? Do I want these things because they actually light me up and they feel true to who I am? Or is it because I'm trying to replicate a life model that I grew up around or that was shown to me on TV and movies? And
Mm,
my divorce in 2020 was really sort of drawing that line in the sand of I am no longer going to just live life on autopilot and do what
mm,
I think I'm supposed to do. And I knew then that the life path I was going to go down was probably going to be harder and more emotionally challenging at times because it meant I was going to have to hold myself accountable, but I knew it would be worth it. And that's what was really calling out to me. And so I started just sort of dismantling this quote unquote perfect life that I had created, but had no connection to whatsoever. And
mm,
after I went through the divorce, I really started to then take a look at my professional life as a divorce attorney.
mm.
And I realized that wasn't aligned with who I am and what I want and the impact I want to have either. And so it was like, oh, great. Now I gotta fix this part too. It wasn't enough to just get divorced, but I've also got to like make a big career shift. And none of these things, I didn't have to do any of them. And
Mm,
that's sometimes what makes it even harder is because when things are fine or okay, and you're not necessarily in a crisis,
right.
then making big changes, I think is even harder because that's when the guilt comes in, or we feel like we're being selfish or we're unreasonable for wanting more. And so that's really how my own background sort of translated to what I do today.
Yeah, I love that. And oh my goodness, so much to unpack here. But you mentioned something about losing sight of ourselves. And I really believe that, you are about just in what I've been reading and what I've been learning about you is helping women reconnect to their true desires. And that is something that I talk about in my world all of the time. So, in your experience, why do you think that so many of us lose that connection in the first place, especially when we are inside of a marriage?
I think there's so much pressure to be everything as women, to be,
Mm,
of course, wife, mother, and now that the economic climate has shifted, like from the
yeah,
70s onward, now it's about being a financial provider sometimes. It's about all of the mental labor and emotional labor that goes into keeping track of everything, keeping everything straight, keeping everything organized, making sure everybody is where they're supposed to be and life is functioning as it should. We pile on all of these different identities and roles and tasks, and it
right.
almost just leaves no extra space or room for yourself.
Mm,
And over time, it becomes quote unquote easier to just focus on doing instead of being until one day you wake up and your soul is just sort of crying out of, hey, we're lost. We've lost our sense of self. We're
mhm.
in just autopilot mode. We're in just constant doing, doing, doing instead of actually checking in with ourselves and making sure that what we're doing actually aligns with what we want.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I'm feeling this so big. And I know that you had said something about we are so good at making life look good on paper or on social media, in our pictures, whatever that is. And also the part where you had said it's really about like, we get so caught up in our own busyness. Sometimes I feel like that is our way to not have to deal with things. And so, what would you say would be some early signs of some of that relationship distress that maybe people are missing or maybe choosing to ignore until it's a much bigger problem?
I would say it is, in many cases, a buildup of a bunch of little things that get
Mhm.
ignored or internalized or diminished over time until
Yeah.
ultimately what you've pushed under the rug is so big that you're tripping over it and you can't ignore it anymore. But
Mhm.
some signs in the moment that something is off or something is misaligned is if you are second guessing yourself instead of just trusting your decisions, whether small day-to-day stuff or big picture ones.
Mhm.
You are having the same conversations or arguments with your partner about the same recurring issues, and it seems like they never really get resolved. It's just sort of become a cycle. You feel more comfortable and grounded and calm in certain situations or around certain people compared to other situations. So, if you're contemplating divorce and you're in a space where you feel more calm and grounded in your body when your partner is not around, that's a definite sign that something is off there that needs to be addressed. And there's just this overarching feeling of flatness and numbness. And I felt just sort of detached, almost like I was just sort of watching myself go through the
Mm.
motions of my life, but feeling so disconnected from my soul and purpose that it was just sort of like an out of body experience almost.
Yeah. No, I could see that. So I'm curious. So if there is someone that is, out there and going, maybe comes to you and says, like, I just don't know if I should stay or if I should go, what does that conversation start to look like in your world? Because how do you even begin to help someone start to even answer that question and start to dig into that?
That is such a good point because I feel like if you start with that question, it feels very overwhelming and scary. That is like a
Right.
big, because that question represents a big change and
Mm,
uncertainty. And when we're in those situations, our natural tendency is to sort of retreat and back away from it because it feels really scary.
right.
So how I try to approach it is more from through the lens of identity reclamation. Who am I? What do I want? And then let's honestly assess my relationship in my life. What components are aligned with what I say I want, and what components are not aligned with what I say I want? And what's getting in the way of me making shifts or changes that are going to bring those misaligned parts back into alignment? And
Mm.
so the question shifts from should I stay or should I go and becomes more so what feels true for me right now.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because I just remember being in that space of going, oh my gosh, and I know because society has a lot of messaging around this too. It's like, and at the time we had two children. So then it's that messaging around staying for the kids, or working on it no matter what, because a lot of us have, for me personally, there was a lot ingrained in me with my beliefs through being raised as a Christian. And it was like, no, you are in it for sickness and health and, all the vows that I thought, oh my gosh, I am betraying. And, what is my part in this? But I love that you are really talking about your own identity and what feels true to us, because that is for sure what I lost. I was staying for all of the reasons for everybody else, but not for me. And when you said kind of looking in at your life like it's not even yours, you're just kind of like going through the motions, I go, oh my gosh, I remember that feeling. And so how helping someone discern what is that wisdom of our inner identity versus what maybe is a story that's keeping them stuck. How do you help someone discern that?
I love how you reference the story because so much of what is getting in the way are the stories
Yeah.
that we tell ourselves or that we pick up from culture or media or religion or how we grew up. I also grew up in
Mhm.
a very conservative Catholic small town in Ohio. And so I hear you as far, the focus in that type of environment is prioritizing longevity of the relationship as
Mm.
opposed to is this actually making me happy and feel fulfilled and feel like the best version of myself, or is it slowly taking me away from myself?
Yeah.
So you've got all of these conflicting external opinions and ideas of what kind of life we should live and what marriage means,
Mhm.
that we get pulled away from what it actually means to us. And all of these other people and opinions are not living your life. You're the one living your life, and the only one who has to live with your decisions is you at the end of the day.
Mm.
And so, how I help sort of unwind that is, I mean, we hear a lot about self-trust, but I think that self-trust requires self-honesty. It's time to get
Mm.
super honest. And I find that my clients are able to do that with me because I'm not involved in their day-to-day life. I'm
Yeah.
objective, outsider, quote unquote. I'm in support of you making the best
Right.
decisions for you, as
Mhm.
opposed to maybe friends or family who, as much as they love you, they're not they're biased. You know,
Yeah.
they
So
want you
true.
to be happy, or they just want to help make the pain go away, or they're sort of projecting their beliefs onto you and it's making
Yeah.
everything even more confusing. And they certainly have an important role to play in this whole process.
Right.
But my role is to help you be 100% honest about who you are, what you want, what's working well, what's not working well, what would alignment look like, and what decisions need to happen to pull you back into alignment, and what's getting in the way. So, like, let's troubleshoot whatever's sort of getting in the way of that.
Yeah, because I know, I mean, I love all of this. Like I keep saying this, going, gosh, this was so because we were going to therapy. We were going to, we were doing what we thought were all the right things. But I felt, and this was just my own personal experience, and this is why I love what you're doing. I felt like a lot of what we were doing was going backwards. We
Mhm.
were going back to the traumas. We were going back to how can we fix these situations rather than looking at our identity, really looking at what is working, what's not working in the present. And I love the idea of even forward thinking because my hang up or maybe my fear was always, and again, this goes back to me and I now I'm able to be fully accountable to it, but going back to that idea of maybe things will change. So again, I think about that and I go, that was living in fear of regret or whatever that could be. And I know for us, we separated for some time, thinking like, okay, it's not fully permanent. We can kind of work on ourselves as we are figuring out and navigating all of this. We did come back together and quickly realized that it was done. It was over. But I went through probably a, very traumatic experience. We had to like flee from the relationship
Oh,
quickly. But for so many women, I see that there is just so much fear of the unknown. There's just those limiting beliefs that they have in themselves, and they're carrying that around. And it's not until later, maybe after they have, potentially gotten a divorce or much later in life, where they go, why was I carrying all of that? And all of that is what basically ruled the roost and ran
yeah.
everything in the relationship. So, do you find that is something that you are constantly working on with women? I mean, I'm assuming with identity work, that is such a huge piece for you.
Yes, the limiting beliefs and the fear are probably the two biggest things that I
Mhm.
help my clients move through so that they can stay focused on the future. It can be limiting beliefs from how divorce will impact their children, and just
Mhm.
sort of this automatic assumption that if I make this decision, they're going to be ruined for the rest of their lives and that's going to be on me. And then we go
Mhm.
down the fear and the rumination spiral.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. Or I'm not going to be able to be financially self-sufficient, right? So all of these assumptions and limiting beliefs are happening, and they're assuming that all of those things are true, and then that's informing the decisions that they make. And so my role is to pause, be like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
Rewind. Let's rewind and let's examine the actual initial the premise of where you started, and
Mm,
let's actually get curious about that and explore that a little more. How true is that? Where did you learn that? How do you
mm,
know that to be true?
mm,
And what other information or resources could you look into to help you validate whether that's true or not? Is that
mhm.
something that you're just sort of grabbing onto because really you're scared of making this big change, which is also understandable, but it is this what's really getting in the way here, and
Right.
what's going to make you feel like it's not about not being scared, because I don't believe in that. When you're making a big change
Yeah.
like this, it is
Right.
scary because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a big change and there's a
Hmm.
lot of uncertainty in it. So it's not about not being scared, it's about what is going to make you feel like you can keep moving forward even though you feel scared?
Yeah.
What is the future that you're working towards? What is your why behind going down this path? Because the path will be difficult at times and there's going to be ups and downs. But
Hmm.
what is it about you and the future that you want for yourself and your kids, if you have kids, that
Yeah.
is driving you? Because there's a reason you keep getting pulled in this direction, no matter how many times you tell yourself, just be grateful, just focus on the positive, things could be a lot
That.
worse. We always do that, especially as women. We tend to use gratitude as a way to discount our truth. But two things can be true. There can be certain
Yes.
components of your life that you're very grateful for,
Yes.
and there can be components that are not in alignment with who you are, and you're allowed to want to change those.
I am so glad that got brought up because I am such a gratitude person. And I love that you say that two things can be true at once because it is so true. We gosh, we're so good at masking our stuff and just being able to go or that phrase I always hear, well, it's all relevant, like it could be worse. And I go,
Yeah.
okay, but how bad do we need this to go? And unfortunately, in my circumstance, I truly can look back and I go, I let it get really bad. I can look back now and say and have these conversations with my children that are now 24 and 17 and have these conversations that just in full honesty going, I should have left a long time ago and being okay with that. And I love that, with in my situation, my kids, they're 7 years apart and I was in a marriage for 19 years. And so it was a long time, but truly they even look back and go, Mom, it was too long. It was too long. And we knew that they know that there were all the right reasons, and at the time we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
But it's looking hindsight, you can go back, and I love having these really beautiful conversations with my kids because no, of course, kids don't ever, I mean, it's not something that you wish for that your parents are getting a divorce or going through all of that. But I lived with so much of that heaviness of what if my kids turn out terribly because I have made this decision,
Yeah.
rather than looking at it as what if things turn out even better. And so I was so stuck in that. And so, again, just being stuck in that fear. And I think that's what I love about women that are doing the work that you're doing is that you are showing people that, let's stay in this present space and let's look at the what ifs because we don't have the evidence of the assumptions that we're making. And that was one thing that really changed me when someone had said, what's your evidence of that? Oh, that stopped me in my tracks because I thought I don't have any.
Yes,
I'm
there's
all in
all
my
just
head.
all of these foregone conclusions that we've
Yeah,
inherited from different sources that we've never thought to question.
right.
And they impact so many of our decisions and cause us to stay stuck in
Yeah.
that emotional limbo for so long. And
Mm, of
yes, of course, like you said, hindsight is 2020, and you
course.
can take accountability for your role and what happened and what you
Yeah.
learned from that situation. My role is to help you see that in real time. And because
Okay.
time is your most valuable asset, time for yourself, time for your kids, time to pursue your dreams and the life that live the life that you want to live. And so, how can we more efficiently make these decisions, not in a way that feels rushed, but in a way that holds you accountable and helps you keep moving forward, as opposed to getting stuck in these loops of fear and limiting beliefs and assumptions about what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And now, on the other end of this, because I know that you are working with women that are starting the rebuild and you've been through this personally. So, for the woman who is on the other side of divorce and just trying to figure out who she even is now, what do you believe is the first real step, like that inner step that women need to take?
I think the first most important step is really it goes back to that identity reclamation. What
Mhm.
are your values? And don't just list them out, but actually do a deep dive. If one of your values is family, okay, what does that mean to you?
Mhm.
What does it mean to fully embody that value? When do you tend to compromise that value? And how do you know you have compromised it? How do you feel physically? How do you feel emotionally? In what situations is it easier to choose that value versus are there competing values that are causing you to have to choose between them, right? So like really
Mhm.
hone in on your top 5 to 10, I would say, values and what those actually mean to you and what they would look like, what your life would look like, and what decisions you would be making if you fully embodied and stayed true to those values. And then anytime you have a major decision, whether it's about career, relationship, kids, personal life, filter it through that value system and sort of
Absolutely.
assess, does this align with my values? Are any values sort of in conflict here? Do I feel like I'm having to
Mhm.
sacrifice certain parts of myself to make this decision work? And
Mhm.
what other options do I have, right? I think that's such a big question because, again, we just always assume we only have it's a black and white decision. It's yes or no, when a lot of times things are more gray and we have more flexibility and wiggle room than we think we do.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And now I know that, you have remarried after going through this yourself. So, I'm just so curious because I know that there was a lot that kind of took place through that process of going through the divorce and then I remarried as well. So, what did you do differently the second time with what you knew and what you believed, or I don't know, what require that you didn't require before when you were thinking about possibly getting into another relationship or remarrying?
In determining going into marriage for the second time and sort of determining what I wanted in a partnership, I really wanted to focus on what worked well in my first marriage and what didn't work well. I'm not going to look at my first marriage and say none of it was good because I wouldn't have married that person and stayed with
Exactly.
that person for as long, I don't believe it's all again black and white, right? It's gray.
Yep.
So what aspects did I enjoy about my first marriage that I want to carry forward with me, right? I really like to travel. I like to go out to eat. I like to go to concerts, right? Like those are bonding activities with my partner that were fun and that
Yeah.
I would want to continue doing in my next relationship. What aspects made the relationship hard and made me lose sense of myself, which would be saying yes when I really wanted to say no, right? Not having any
Mm.
boundaries, allowing myself to sort of just mold my life into his life and just kind of lose sight of my own hobbies and dreams and passions and how to actually communicate that versus internalize it because I feel guilty and then have that compound and compile until something causes me to explode because I feel like I'm sacrificing everything, right? So like
Yeah.
and again, that's how I contributed to the dynamic was not being a good communicator. And so how can I
Right.
improve on my communication, even though it feels really hard and scary to say, I'm angry
Yeah.
or I'm upset or I'm anxious or I feel disconnected from you, right? Like it's about
Mhm.
how can I name those emotions and thoughts and fears in real time with my partner and trust that he will receive it and not discount my experience or tell me I'm being unreasonable or try to change my mind, but just
Yeah.
receive it and be there. So those are the types of things that I really wanted to focus on going into my current marriage.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that because one of the most profound things that I always tell my husband that he had said to me when we were dating, because the thing is if we don't take accountability for some of our actions in why there was a breakdown, you're going to have problems later. And,
Yeah.
it was one of those things that I was doing the work and I was really just coming into this relationship. I had, dated for a little bit. I waited for a solid year. Now, this was just me feeling like I had kids too. So it was very different because it was like we just needed to process, get through some healing before I even was stepping out. And even when I stepped out, it was like I was treading lightly. But even with all of the work that I had done, I remember one time I don't know, I was upset about something and I was kind of like wanting him to notice that I was
Yes.
upset, but I was very passive.
Yep.
And I was very much just like, ooh, we're still like newer, I knew we were serious at this point, but like it was still newer to where, you don't want it's again those fears that come out of like, I don't want to upset him or what is he going to come back with? And so I remember just kind of doing my little pout, like, and that whole thing, like, how are you today? I'm fine. That
Oh, I'm
whole like,
fine.
oh, it's so yes. And I remember him just acting as if I were fine. And we just kind of were going on through the night. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, I'm not fine. Ask me again, and he didn't. And finally, I remember later saying to him, it was later that evening, I got the courage and I got the guts to just go, I'm not really fine and I'm kind of upset about this. And he explained to me, he said, okay, he says, I cannot read your mind and I am going to believe what it is that you're telling me and I'm going to take that as truth. And, he says, you didn't, I mean, it wasn't like I was doing anything like out of the ordinary to where he was like, okay, I'm concerned, but he goes, you have to communicate that with me. So that way I know things are not fine and we can work through this. And that has stuck with me for the last 10 years. And I just go, you know what, those times that I want to go back to that scared woman and go, oh, I don't know if I should say this. I always remember that and go, you know what, he can't read my mind. And if there's something bothering me, I need to be honest about it if I want to have this conversation because it's not fair to the other person to just have them assume, and being passive, those kind of behaviors are just never fun. But
Yeah.
it's just so true. And I think, making sure that we are in a place of accountability so that when we do move forward, we're looking at all the new things that we want, but we're also looking at, okay, but I also have to be accountable in this relationship as well. So I love that you said that because communication is huge. It's huge, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
I mean, one other thing I would add is
yeah.
that one thing that I didn't seek out in my first marriage that I did want to be very intentional about in my second marriage is having a professional help with some of these
Mm,
conversations
yeah.
because old habits die hard. It can be really hard for me to open up and my husband has his own, personal tendencies when it comes to
Yeah.
communication. And so I my view on seeking out support, whether it's from a therapist or a coach, has changed so much that it's more
Mhm.
about being proactive as opposed to reactive. How can
Mhm.
we be consistent, whatever consistency looks like for you as a couple, but how can we consistently have those check-ins either directly and or with a professional with us to help the conversation so that we aren't just allowing things to pile up until we explode and then go to therapy, right? It's how
Yeah.
can we lay that solid foundation and be more proactive about our communication as opposed to reactive?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was just saying the same thing to my daughter. She's 24 and she is with her high school sweetheart. They've been together for almost 8 years now. And they've been long distance. They've gone to, different colleges and but we just had this big conversation about, she came to me and she says, Mom, she's going through her master's program and she is mastering in clinical psychology, shocker. And but I laughed because, she came to me and she said, and her, just a little context, is her boyfriend is a firefighter, and so that lifestyle is very different as well, and they've essentially grown up together. And obviously we know that you change, you are not the same person as you were when you're 16 years old, and so she said, we're gonna seek out some counseling, and it's not because things are bad, it's just that we really both believe we want to have a solid foundation for when we potentially get married down the road and have kids. And I was like, yes,
I
those
love
are right.
that.
I go, that is what I'm talking about. It's not waiting until you are in the depths of, I don't know if we're supposed to stay in this relationship, but it is noticing already that this creates a beautiful foundation when we
Yeah.
allow ourselves to get honest. And I just loved that. I was just like, it was a very proud mom moment because I was like, I'm going to
Yeah.
take that as you're hearing all of these seeds were planted.
Grappling, right? And
Right.
it's so interesting to then again in hindsight go back to when you were grappling with that decision of whether to stay in that marriage
Yeah.
and you were so scared of the impact it would have on your kids. And then
Mhm.
when you fast forward to today and they got to see you model what it looks like to be honest with yourself, to
Yeah.
get support when you need it, and to make hard decisions that are going to move you into the future that you want. Like they got to see all of that. And now they're making decisions accordingly. And I think that's just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It is. And, just to kind of wrap up, because I know we could be here forever, because I geek out on this and I'm just so thrilled to have you. But for someone that's listening right now and maybe they're in a relationship that maybe just feels off, but they can't really name it, what's the one thing that you would want them to hear today?
Mm. You can trust what you're feeling, even if you don't know what the answer is yet.
I love that. So good. So good. I think I love that that came up a lot for us today, is that trusting ourselves and just listening to that. And I think even just getting
Yeah.
curious with why am I feeling this way? What is going on? Because once we start to get curious, I feel like that's when we really, start to be able to just start to have maybe those answers that we are shoving down or we're getting too busy to recognize before it gets to a point where you're like in a desperate situation. So I love that
Yeah.
so much. And thank you. This is just so insightful. And again, I just feel like it's such a beautiful place for women to feel seen and to just maybe go like, gosh, I needed to hear that today. I need to get curious about what's going on, or a reflection of, yep, I've been through that, and I get it, I understand it, but now I have the opportunity to have these conversations and not feel that shame and be able to look at it as these are the stories that go before us are oftentimes what gives us hope for what can be on the other side. And again, I always say, I'm not promoting go out and get a divorce. Like it's not a fun, you were a lawyer, you get this. Like it is
Yeah.
not it is a hard decision. It's not one to take lightly, but it definitely is something that I think needs to be talked about more. So I do appreciate that. And to end, I always love to, and instead of ending on this heavy note, I always love to end with something that we do. It's called Spark and Spill. It's our little segment. It's just quick, no wrong answers. And I would love to ask you a couple fun questions today.
Yeah, let's do it. I
All
agree.
right.
Let's shift the energy as we wrap
Yes,
up.
we're going to just shift it a little bit, but we'll make sure that before we end, you guys can get in touch with Kara because you need her in your world if this is something you're experiencing right now. But my first question is always, what is your favorite morning beverage?
I always try to drink water, of course, as soon as I wake up, but that's boring. So I would say after that, it would probably be my pre-workout. I'm a big health fitness
Nice.
girl, and so my pre-workout just really like helps me get excited for not just the workout, but the day that follows the workout and just sort of gets my morning going. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Love it. Now, what is one thing you do every single day that is absolutely non-negotiable for you?
I have to get outside. and it just helps me get out of my own head. Like I take multiple just 10-15 minute walks a day. I live in New York City, a block away from Central Park. So I just go
Nice.
straight into the park, do a big loop, come back, and it just helps me reset, especially if I have a very busy, stressful day or I'm trying to get into a creative flow for writing things. It's non-negotiable. And when it's raining out, it's those are my hard days. We need to be outside for like little
Right.
pockets of time. Yeah.
Right. Well, fun fact, my son is going to be a senior next year, and we are actually going to tour in just a couple of weeks NYU. This is his number one choice of schools. And so mama's freaking out a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's all the way across the country. We're in California. But he wants to get into the music industry. He's not a musician. I mean, he kind of is, but it's more about focusing on the business side behind it. And
Yeah.
NYU is a great school, we hear, for that. And so, but he loves New York City, like absolutely loves
Oh,
it. And so, yeah, so we'll be there. And, but we keep telling him, we keep going, you're used to sunny California and, but
yep.
he just, it's like, it, and I look at it and I go, you know what? I don't think he cares. I think he's just all about experiences. And it's just like, you know what? Bring life to me. I'm just going to experience it and see what it's like. And so we're
Let's
excited
go on
to
the ride.
go. Yes.
Excited.
I might have to connect with you and ask you some questions.
Yes.
But all right. How about a book or film that genuinely changed how you see the world? That one's a little
The
tricky.
book I read at the very beginning of my separation and divorce in my first marriage was Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
So
And
good.
that really just like lit a fire under my butt of just, again, just reading someone's story who had done everything that they were quote unquote supposed to do to be happy, realizing that they had created a life that didn't reflect who they were at all, and just stripping back all of the layers to get back to the core.
Yeah.
So that one was definitely a game changer for me.
Yes, that was a game changer for me too. I love that one.
Yeah.
So, all right, now this is a fun one. Last one.
Mhm.
Best date idea for a couple who wants to actually reconnect. So, not just going through the motions. What do you think is a fun date idea?
I love and there's so many different brands and options out there now, but
Yeah.
the decks of cards that have questions on them,
Oh,
and you can bring those with you either to a restaurant or do a date inside your house and just sort of like set the vibe. But the questions I love because I think the longer we're in a relationship, the higher the tendency to sort of go onto autopilot and not ask questions, just like curious questions, the
yeah.
questions that you wouldn't even think to ask. And you just assume, well, I already know everything there is to know about my partner. But that's not true.
Right. Not true.
These question cards really like, and some are more fun, surface level, some are deeper, some are more about like intimacy and
Mhm.
sexy stuff. But like it just sparks conversation. And I think that's what sort of reignites that flame of
Oh,
interest. You get to see your partner through that different lens of like, oh yeah, that's why you caught my interest. That's who I fell in love with. It's just like a good reminder
totally.
of your partner is a human with their own quirks and traits about them. So it's fun to learn about.
I love that. That is so fun. That gives me like a little, oh, I should go out and get some of these. I love that
Yeah.
idea. Well, Kara, this conversation was everything. I just loved how we got to be honest and just real. It's always so incredibly needed in this space, as I've said. But thank you for bringing your truth and just your expertise and your heart, because I really believe that oftentimes when we have gone through something hard and challenging, we are able to see it from a different lens. And we just have such a servant's heart to help others go through it as best as they can. So, before I let you go, where is the best place for our listeners to find you and to connect with your work?
Yes, thanks again for having me. And this conversation was so fun. And like you said, I could talk for hours about this,
I know.
but I know we have to come to an end. So, yes, you can find me either on my website, which is karafranciscoaching.com, or you can find me on Instagram. My handle is at
Yes, you have to follow her on Instagram. Such good content over there. I was geeking out and I was looking at some stuff and I was going, yes, that is so true. And so sorry if I totally like just blew up your page because I think I was hearting everything and commenting. But friends, we will have all of Kara's links and everything she mentioned right here in the show notes so you can find her easily. And to all of you listening, remember you deserve a life that feels aligned. So, with that, keep rising, keep shining, and know that your best day is right here waiting for you. Bye, guys. See you next week. And thanks so much, Kara.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review. And don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.